You can even get cakes. That's a car. Seriously, a car with working headlights and everything. Jude loves his car more than me some days. Only a few weeks out of the year you get me most of the time. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is Death by Pony and today we're hopping right back in to our life. So without further ado, let's go. I will remember that. Baxter retrieved a notepad and pen from his inner jacket pocket. So normally I'd love to hear as much about you two as you're willing to share. However, I'm aware we have a schedule to keep. I'll stick to what's most relevant to the task at hand. I will still need to ask many questions. You need to bear with me. It's important to have all the specifics and make certain we're on the same page. I'd never want to simply assume I know what you want. Instead, I want you to say for yourselves what your hopes and plans and ideas are. I get what you mean. We made that mistake before. Scott messed with his ponytail and chuckled at some private thought. It perked Baxter's smile. There was an interest beyond the mere polite attention. A little hint of continue didn't go unheard. Scott was just that kind of person. If there was an opening to talk, he would fill it gladly.
The thing is,
when we were still long distance, actually starting from before or even dating, I'd always gone about getting my nose pierced. At least once a year, ever since I knew him, I talked it up just to Jude, how this time I was actually going to do it. Eventually, Jude stopped being convinced that I was going to do it on my own. He told me if he did seriously get one, he'd do it too, and then we could match.
Well...
Then I did, and he did, separately in other states. And you can see for yourself, we had different ideas of what getting a gold nose ring meant. Yep, it was as plain as the nose on their faces. Jude had a gold horseshoe in his septum. Meanwhile, Scott had 2 golden hoops in one nostril. Now we have almost matching nose rings. Scott clapped his palms against his knees, ending the table on that note. Jude, bellowing, laughed loud immediately.
It's good.
It's like our almost matching nose rings. And hey, now we've got a real matching rings. He flexed his left hand, showing off the distinct black band. The 2 men had identical engagement rings. Unable to resist the temptation, Scott filled Jude's open hand with his own. Jude clasped him back. They were a delightful couple. Even a pro like Baxter could see it.
Charming.
This is absolutely charming. Not to mention a good reminder that even if something doesn't go exactly as planned, that does not mean it's all bad. But of course, I'll do what I can to make the day everything you're dreaming of. He clicked the pen out. To start off, we thought of possible surnames. Either of you going to be taking the others using hyphenation, not making any changes, or so on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Scott's last name, Adam. Mr. and Mr. Adam. It's it. Baxter quietly vocalized the official name while jotting down the first note of the session. And what you have finished already. Venue and food. My cousin is a photographer, so that's covered. It's a caterer. That's what we have. There's no wedding cake or any desserts, actually. Not that we need it. Who's gonna starve without cake? Cove Holden. Thank goodness he wasn't here to listen to such blasphemy. Almost nothing is technically needed to be married legally, but if we can have it, why shouldn't we? Sure, if there's time. They went back and forth, trading comments and remembering points the other hadn't, huddled close on the couch. It was like watching a meeting between the 2 kings and their semi-trusted advisor. Unfortunately, in the moment, it was comparable to kings coming from different countries rather than ones ruling together. Their approaches were not the same. The final guest list is done. Invitations already sent. We've got speakers for music.
and?
There's no live band or DJ, just playlist. And the ceremony and reception take place in one room. We have a runner and a podium for the ceremony. The location comes with chairs and tables, but there aren't a lot of decorations done. Leaning close and listening close, Baxter pressed 2 fingers into his chin. Do you know what you will be wearing? Scott's face ping-ponged between his planner and fiancé. He stalled. We've got suits.
It's not great.
Suits we already own, he means. It's nothing special. We haven't bought or rented anything for our wedding, but What we have would work if there's no other way.
I see.
Baxter himself paused there, considering a picture was beginning to form in his mind. Are there any traditions or extra touches you'd like to include in either the ceremony or the reception? I don't know. 5 minutes in, and Scott was already sighing. He pressed his glasses higher on his face.
Oh.
If you couldn't tell, we haven't gotten far enough to consider anything extra. We're short on major parts still. The office chair creaked as Baxter rested against it. The gesture was disarming, physically pulling back from the non-stop questioning.
Bravo.
Firstly, let me say, you guys have already taken care of is commendable. My job is going to be far easier. Jude and Scott were absolutely flattered someone in Baxter's position had good things to say about the situation. With how much they'd put into their big day, getting some positive feedback must have been a real treat. They smiled shyly to one another. I'd like you to get me the contact information for the venue and caterer when you can. I'll put it in the group chat. Excellent. He'd gotten his meeting off to the right foot intentionally, so Baxter pivoted to make his next move.
It's doable.
Second, there should be a space to finish multitask with the time we have and the amount of people who can assist, so let's prioritize and delegate. Desserts and decorations are the foremost. Then, only if there's room, would anything else be done? Possible selecting new clothes for the occasion? Is that what I'm hearing? Yes. Sure. Throughout the extended interview, you, Terry, Miranda had been silent. Scott and Jude might have very well forgotten you were in the room. At that point, your job was to listen. You'd only acted once the decisions were ready to be put into action. But watching Baxter work as a professional planner was a surreal experience. He seriously did not look like he knew what he was doing. He was asking the right questions. He seriously did look like he knew what he was doing. He was asking the right questions, reading the room. Baxter's skills had grown considerably since helping with Miranda's birthday party. We've already gotten stuff we're working on at our place. We're making guest favors. No clue where we'd get a cake.
It's true.
Me neither. I tried, but how do I know if they're going to be any good at it? Who orders a wedding cake before their wedding? Being able to make others desserts doesn't mean you can actually do that decently. If you're willing to take recommendations, I'm acquainted with a baker. Xavier comes highly recommended by my previous clients, and I can vouch for them personally. Did you get your wedding cake from them? What a question. Scott meant it with complete sincerity. He has no ring. Oh, so?
No.
I'm unmarried at the moment, entirely single in fact, but I would hire them for my own if I did have the occasion. You didn't know what the perception was of unwed wedding planners. Baxter was flustered with the circumstances regardless. Right. He chuckled admirably to smooth the mild bump right over. Scott hadn't even registered the pitfalls that was barely avoided. He was getting excited. Things were finally coming along. All right, we'll go there. What are we going to get? We can discuss it. Yeah, how long is it going to take? Can we order today? The pressure Baxter intentionally released was layered on extra thick with Jude's cut to the finished take on the bakery. This is possible since time is of the essence. You wouldn't be able to do tasting session. That means you'll have to trust the flavors will be on your liking.
In that case...
Getting common or familiar options would be my suggestion, but you can certainly try something more unique if your heart is set on it. Are there any allergies we need to consider?
That's whatever.
No, that's whatever. Get chocolate and some vanilla. In that case, Baxter didn't accept the first answer he received. Baxter's keen eyes went to Jude, other half, for a second opinion. Scott gulped.
I don't know.
I don't know. What else is there to pick off the top of my head? We can think on it a little longer. Baxter kept his tone approachable, harmless. He was having to double as a therapist, gently coaxing clients to speaking their minds. No, I really don't know. We should get chocolate and vanilla. Everybody will like that. That's fine. It's a classic, chocolate and vanilla. The note was taken down. Baxter pressed firmly into the paper at one point a period.
What do you think?
Do you have any design notes? Normally, that'd be done with the baker, but again, limited schedule. I imagine you don't want to sit down and get acquainted with someone new. We can have the details prepared ahead of time to expedite the process. What design does the cake need? It depends on you. Cakes can come in about any style you can imagine, and many more styles you'd never think of on your own. Scott almost leapt from his seat over the topic. Maybe he would have if he wasn't so pressed on all sides. It's true, I saw a lot of pictures when looking at bakeries. They can be so cool. People make these 3D carved cakes carve 3D carved cakes into shapes of things. It doesn't look like cake at all. There were a few more opportunities in life when you could justify spending a lot of money on an incredible cake. The prospect of that time being had Scott more excited about the planning than anything else so far. You can even get cakes that's a car. Seriously, a car with working headlights and everything. Jude loves his car more than me some days. Only a few weeks out of the year you get me most of the time. They shared a laugh. The meeting was becoming friendly, more fun. The two could enjoy the process past all the stress of it, except...
Not happening.
But building a cake car isn't gonna work. No one could do it. Unfortunately, Jude was correct on that count. Baxter's recommended baker had to be good. However, humans could only do so much. A custom confection vehicle, in the matter of days, with no prior notice, was asking for there to be no cake at all. In fact, it made baking cupcakes the night before an event look like a piece of cake. Perhaps a compromise is in order. For example, simple tiered cake with some model decorations. Who's gonna notice? Baxter lowered his pen. The positive momentum had been lost. This doesn't need to be wrapped under a stressful timeline. However, there is room to still have whatever you actually want. I want a cake that you can eat. I want that too. It doesn't need a lot of fancy stuff. We're not fancy people.
Very well.
I see. The future Adams might not have been particularly prissy, but as bona fide fancy man himself, Baxter was personally insulted by the repeated dismissiveness of all formalities. At least he would have been 5 years ago. He had no idea on what was thinking now. The expression was inscrutable. It was only clear that he was continuing to pay close attention. Well, I won't pressure you to do more than you'd like, but I think we should at least pick a couple words to denote the overall theme. Traditional, vintage, modern, and such. Finished and not ugly. Jude wouldn't bite, no matter how appetizing the treat. Baxter reevaluated his approach. Those should go without saying, without this baker. If it doesn't matter in particular to you, that isn't a problem. Scott, do you have any preference? I wanted something that seems modern. Old-fashioned cakes are not my style. Or, in less diplomatic terms, the sight of frou-frou buttercream piping might have made him break out in hives, despite the lack of allergies. Absolutely, that's the approach. What's the actual presentation? Simplistic, elegant, floral, beachy?
Would that be alright?
Could it be simple and elegant? Scott thoughtfully scratched the stubble along his jaw and gazed wondering. That combination of description was more of those possibilities he couldn't imagine, apparently.
Certainly.
Then that, right. He glanced to Jude instinctively and dismissive as Jude had been about the cake. Scott remained hopeful his partner would feel positive about it.
Great.
Perfect, Scott. Jude meant it. Even if it wasn't what Scott wanted, it was enough. I'm glad you think so. In that case, since you're thinking of keeping it simple and prioritizing flexibility, I could visit the bakery for you to make the request. You have other obligations to take care of, I imagine. I can confirm the budget through text when I get a quote. Do you know the amount of tiers you'd want? You tell us. You've seen how big our party is.
All right.
I can certainly give my take for a wedding of your size. I suggest 3 tiers at least.
Done.
Guess so.
Guess so. That's good. We're going to have a wedding cake. Compared to how enthusiastic Scott stared at the outside of the topic, the conclusion was like a cake that didn't get baking powder mixed in the batter flat. Still, it seemed any cake would do, literally and metaphorically. Drew didn't care and Scott wouldn't push it. Baxter's planning abilities hadn't been tested there, and the only one who came out fully satisfied was Jude.
I can do that.
I believe I know everything I need at the moment. I can put that order for you today. Thank you for so much help, but somebody should go with you. Be sure I can do it. Would the rest of you be good at making favors? Probably. Amazingly, the single word response, said with a shrug, didn't fill Scott with
I'm
confidence.
not sure.
Maybe somebody else should go to the bakery, Jude. He can handle it. We got a planner, so he can do his thing and we can do our thing. The version of disagreement didn't frazzle Mr. Ward. He calmly interjected with a suggestion. If the two of you are the most informed about the guest flavors, then someone who doesn't know that process as well could attend the bakery with me. Jude is right. You know you're lucky to have others here to assist, and it isn't me alone. We can share the responsibilities. Randy and Terry have been helping out. James just got here. We have to show him how to do it. Scott grabbed his fiance's shoulder as he piggybacked on where Jude was going. They had been redirected back to the same page.
Yes.
Or he could be the one to go to the bakery. Your name coming up from that assignment didn't get the planner to acknowledge you in any way. He reacted as distantly as if he said their random cousin Tom Gregg could go. Baxter wasn't intending to mess around with the planning. You could understand that. Do you mind, James? Sure, I can go to the bakery. Nice, I get the fun part. If that's what's best, I'll do whatever you need. Leave it to me. Give it a thumbs up, you simply shrug. Nice, I get the fun part. Honestly, you would have volunteered if no one had mentioned you. Getting to snag some one-on-one time with Baxter was a chance you couldn't miss. You were going to do the best work you could to help, but seeing him only in the context of big group wasn't just the same. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
That makes sense. James will do a good job getting the desserts. Terry nodded at the wisdom in the plan. It was a unanimous decision. Baxter grinned past you in an entirely artificial way. It's settled. A few more minor details were laid out before the end of the meeting was officially called. You had exited the building in one group and then split off into the parking lot. The main team of Scott, Jude, Moran, and Terry was going to spend the entire afternoon on guest favors, while you branched out in the task of arranging a cake. Baxter directed the way to go and separate from the crowd first. You had to give fast farewells before catching up with your partner for the operation. Baxter led you back to the back of the lot and approached what you assumed was his car. Somehow, as you got closer, you could have guessed it was Baxter's. It was sparkling white, not a single scratch, scuff, or speck of dirt. Once the door was open, the interior, however, was floor-to-ceiling black. Oh wow, it's fancy! Black and white, another coincidence perhaps? Or were there too many of those at this point for it to be happenstance? Baxter eased the seatbelt across his chest and addressed his passenger. You. It was strange. He had been so committed to maintaining a defined distance when it was no longer an option, he didn't touch on the change. He behaved as if he was always an employee at your service.
So,
Welcome to my vehicle. Please change the temperature and air direction to your liking. The radio works. I'll leave it off, but of course, you can put on some music if you want. Baxter's face was kept straight ahead, eyes towards the road. He hadn't even started driving yet. How professional. You could watch him as much as you'd want, right up and close, and you did. The beauty mark on his neck was close enough to touch. That was him, Baxter Ward. And it was you and Baxter sitting alone in the car after 5 years and promises that you'd never see each other again. And he wasn't going to acknowledge even a hint of that on his own. You were certain of it. Am I allowed to speak to the driver, or is that off limits, you teased? Can we talk? You didn't need to put him on the spot. It was a relief that he didn't want to confront your past. I feel like it's going to remain awkward. We don't talk. What would we speak about?
apologize.
I can endeavor to help with any part of the planning, but unfortunately my base knowledge is limited to specific areas. Well, that was a pleasant way to outright reject talking about anything actually important. Your car is black and white, huh? What's the baker like? How long have you been a wedding planner? Hey, when do people normally order wedding cakes? Have you been doing well? So your car's black and white, huh? His grip loosened on the wheel. A softball question was the right call. Yeah, it was the model available at the dealership. He was tempted to add follow-ups or kickstart other conversations. He bunted each one, answering as succinctly as possible. It couldn't be described as a cheerful drive, but time passed in an acceptably uneventful fashion. And soon Baxter was pulling up into the parking spot somewhere in the heart of Prism Vista City. You arrived. A pastel pink sign plastered across the top of the building read Zach's Bakery, and in big bold letters, a smaller cursive underneath said Cake Designer by Xavier. Baxter approached without wasting a second. A tinkling bell jingled as Baxter opened the door. He held it out for you. Being in a rush didn't mean being impolite, apparently. You joined him. The design of the sign accurately alluded to what was to come. The whole bakery was decked out in soft pinks and creams. A dessert in the neat little row was delightfully delicate. If the taste matched the presentation, they must be incredible. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, hit like. That way I know you're enjoying the content I'm making. Hit subscribe. That way YouTube brings you back Here's Happens Next. I won't take up any more of your time. Have a good day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!